Hello everybody, the Nameless Narcissist here once again, a simple man diagnosed with MPD, giving you the facts on narcissistic personality disorder and things that go on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, but keep in mind, I am no clinician, I can only speak my own experiences and the research literature that I read. Okay, I am taking off my glasses for this video too, because this is a long-winded, very complicated subject that I probably will have to refer to a couple studies as I'm going out through this. I want to point out before I get into this, this is not a critique necessarily of the practice of euthanasia or patient-assisted suicide, which I want to point out that for the sake of this video, I'm just using those interchangeably because, I mean, effectively they're the same thing, let's be honest. Just the means of delivery are different, I would say. And I do have a little bit of vested interest in this because, and maybe a little bit of bias, due to the fact that a while ago I had somebody make a comment that they were effectively like, oh, I have they're basically kind of like, oh, my dad was a narcissist and he abused me to the point that I'm going to have patient-assisted suicide or euthanasia. They were moving from the UK to Belgium in order to have it done. And, you know, we could get into a whole conversation. Were they a narcissist? Who knows? But it's not really relevant. And for the sake of this video, sure, let's just assume that they are. I'm not going to link where that comment is. I left it up because I felt like, you know, if somebody effectively left a suicide note on my channel, it felt bad for me to delete something like that, despite it being kind of upsetting. And at the same time, I don't want to link it because that just seems almost disrespectful. I also know somebody in our communities and the Cluster B people who is thinking about doing very similar things. So as I got into researching this for the sake of, first of all, the person on my channel, I also came across a lot of information when it comes to personality disorders because they look like they're the most likely to seek that kind of treatment, in quotes. Anyways, let's get into this. I'm referencing 3 studies here. One of them is based specifically in the Netherlands. And the other 2 were kind of, one was a meta study and I forget what the other one was. I'll link them all in the comments. So basically the first thing I want to point out is that before I get into the statistics and how worrying a lot of this stuff is that this is when people are regarded as untreatable in terms of mental illness. And what that yells to me isn't so much that these patients are untreatable or patient resistant or treatment resistant. What it yells out to me is that we don't have ample ability to be able to treat these patients with either severe personality disorders or PTSD. And I think this idea that we aren't treatable, as somebody who has both PTSD and a personality disorder, I'm using PTSD as a benchmark for people who possibly went through abuse from somebody with a personality disorder, just because, you know, that's not super common, but the extremes where they'd feel driven to do something like this, that would probably be the most applicable diagnostic thing that they'd be seeking assisted suicide for. But yeah, I think that to put this on the patients being like, you are not treatable, your disorder is too hard, or you are treatment resistant, is just these clinicians trying to basically get blame away from themselves. It's not my fault. I can't treat these people. They're either treatment resistant or the disorder is way too bad. And that's not true. We just had not, either the clinician is not competent enough to treat them, or we have not found a treatment option that is particularly effective for whatever disorder they're going through right now. So anyways, I'm gonna get into the first study. I want to point out that so what I think would be the only times that I would even consider it being acceptable for someone to get euthanasia for a disorder is when they have gone through every single means to have their disorder treated, right? 56% of them refuse some sort of treatment with varying degrees, and these are the people who died in this one. 56% refuse some sort of treatment. That's interesting. Why are we eager to basically be like, well, we should be like, you have not tried everything. That should be a worst case scenario. These doctors should be saying, no, you can't do this yet. You haven't explored everything. And 56% of these, loneliness is specifically mentioned. 56% of these are quoting loneliness, something that can be, relatively speaking, easily fixed. For one of the reasons that they are going to have the government help them commit suicide. Now, here's one I love. So basically how this works is you have one person who's basically making who's basically the person kind of handling the entire process. Then they're going to have several people come in for like, basically to check, you know what I mean? Like be like, oh, like, is this actually a case where it's warranted, right? Only 41% of those people were psychiatrists. The rest were general practitioners. You know, the people who aren't supposed to be treating mental illness or aren't specifically trained are the primary ones in the majority of these cases. Only 41% were actually people that were experts in fucking mental health. That's insane. Oh, and also here's a fun, and I'm pretty sure it was only like 36% that even had a psychiatrist involved at all. That's what one of the other studies say. Oh, and guess what? General practitioners are 2.6 times as likely to approve one of these requests. 2.6. That's thinking people who know less about mental disorders are like 150% more likely to to approve them killing themselves. That is insane. And the fact that these people are allowed to approve these sort of requests is even more insane. Oh, it was 11% no psychiatrists were involved. Okay, never mind. I was completely wrong. But still, you see my point, though. The people that were in charge of that entire process were way more likely to approve shit like that. 24 of the cases, there were disagreements. 24 of them, they did not come to a consensus, and they were still approved. And in most of those cases, it was the psychiatrist who said it probably wasn't necessary, you know, go figure. In one case, she met with the person twice. And this, in fairness, was a case that they were like, oh, proper procedures were not dealt with here. This woman was around 80 years old. She was depressed. That was her main diagnoses. Neither time was she met alone. It was with her family both times. And she was met twice, and the first time was 3 weeks before they killed her. 3 weeks. You had 3 weeks there to go in and say, I want to die, and then you die. And also, since this woman was 80 years old, what I'm afraid of is that this woman was dependent on this family of hers, right? And since they were there both times, that maybe you know, and this sounds cruel and almost unthinkable that some people would do this, but I'm sure all of you have heard horror stories about how cruel some people can be. It wouldn't surprise me if these people were strong-arming this 80-year-old woman that was probably a pain in the ass for them, right? Into doing this so they didn't have to deal with it anymore. And in 43%, there was no case-specific language in these like cases, right? Which this means that basically there was nothing about the patient themselves, nothing about the patient itself that they were like, this is why I think this is the best option for this patient. Another study, it says 27 to 28% had not been treated with any form of psychotherapy. 27 to 28% had not had the most basic treatment option offered. Well, maybe offered, but maybe they just didn't accept it. But still, and then they went to, you know, euthanasia. In this study, it was, about the same, a little bit less. 70% were not psychiatrists, so a little bit less psychiatrists involved in this one. Interestingly enough, doctors were more effective when when the patients didn't have personality disorders. So I guess that to me, that speaks to how clinicians can dehumanize people with PDs. 50% of them were new patients. Basically, these clinicians had no experience with them, and they just went in and were like, hey, help me unalive myself. And they just went through with it. 36% had no psychiatrists at all. So these studies are conflicting a little bit, but I think that one was more of a general one, and the other one was specific to the Netherlands. Oh, here's fun statistics. The age limits for these. For the Netherlands, 12 and up. 12 and up. I assume that it doesn't specify that they need parents' permission, but either way, I wouldn't trust an 18-year-old to make that decision, let alone somebody who's 12. And if they are somebody going through extreme abuse, or like, I don't know, have you guys heard those horror stories about how people going through a divorce will get custody of the partner's dog just to put it down. I mean, I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I'm sure there's a couple of these instances where there's some severe abuse going on, and maybe the parents will sign off on it if they're willing to abuse the crap out of their kids to the point that they're suicidal. I'm sure they'll go along with that. That's just conjecture, obviously, but it's something I can easily imagine happening. In Belgium, there is no limit, but it requires permission from the parents. Or if they're emancipated. You know what that means? My sister, if we lived in Belgium, my sister was emancipated at 16. She would have been able to get government assistance. A 16-year-old. A 16-year-old would have been able to do that. Would any of you trust a 16-year-old to make that decision? Jesus Christ. So 50% of the people in this study had personality disorders. So I'm going to be getting into that side of things a little bit more. 50% had personality disorders. Over half of the people with personality disorders had BPD. It's thought that the second most likely was NPD. And they said, without prospects of improvement due to treatment resistance, because we're untreatable according to clinicians who don't have the experience to treat us, or due to the fact that we do not have ample, like there aren't treatment options available, right? Again, this is putting the responsibility of us being treated on us instead of on the practitioners, on the therapists, or whatever. Yeah, it's not specified why they were claimed to be treatment resistant either. Also, want to say something crazy? 1% of total, because 4% of deaths in the Netherlands were for mental illnesses in general. Not for mental illnesses, for euthanasia in general. 1% of those were for mental illnesses. So of the 1% of deaths that happen in the Netherlands, those are people getting government-assisted suicide because of mental conditions that the government is not treating, or at least people in general aren't treating. Fucking Christ. Yeah, here's another fun one. So it's, in this case, in the personality disorders at least, 72% had received some unspecified psychotherapy. Guess how many went through all of the empirically proved treatments possible for people with personality disorders? Guess. There was about 50 of them. Well, in this case, I forget. I think there's about, maybe a little bit. I think it was around 50 of them in this case study. Of all those people, guess how many had, let's say, maybe DBT, maybe, I forget, EMDR? Is that it? The, trauma therapy? I forget what it's called. Oh no, hell. And fucking 30% of them didn't have anything. But guess how many had all of the empirically proved ones, or the evidence-based treatments? I'm gonna give you 5 seconds in order to guess. One of them went through all of the options before they were approved. One of them. If people don't see an issue with this, because again, I'm not even criticizing euthanasia as a practice itself. The implementation, though, is fucking insane. And, think about it. Especially if you're in a society where you're getting a lot of these, think how many doctors who are just kind of going throughout their day and, have a lot on their plate, right? And they don't want to deal with the bureaucracy, and they just sign off of shit without even really looking over it. I bet that happens all the time. I know that it happens in other jobs that I've been in, when I worked at the prison and stuff. People just won't want to deal with it. They don't look over it. They just fucking sign off. I'm sure they looked at it, right? But they're not applying that much thinking to it. They got way more shit to do. Fuck. One fucking person. One person went through all of the options, and the empirically supported ones at that. Oh my God, it even says in this study that the carriers may underestimate the requirements because, if there's so many people, right? It's oh, I know this doctor, he probably knows what he's doing, I'll approve whatever the fuck he says. And we also have to consider how many of these people that are applying for this is in reality a cry for help. You know what I mean? How many of these people don't want to die? They're just please, do something. The fact that 56% of them were due to... they listed loneliness as a factor really proves that point in my mind. This, I didn't know it was as bad as this, if I'm being honest, euthanasia for mental illness, right? I thought there was at least a little bit more. Only in Europe will they not execute child molesters, but they'll execute people for having mental illnesses. That's fucking crazy. Imagine somebody with borderline personality disorder, not even putting them through dialectical behavioral therapy, you know, the thing that's proven to help people BPD the most, and then they're just fucking put in front of a firing squad. You know, obviously not a firing squad, but you guys know what I mean. Like, how many of these people, like, again, like, these are a lot of these people are lonely, depressed people who maybe they just want companionship, maybe they just want somebody to tell them that, like, they're worth something, and so they go to that extreme. I hear so many people who are moving from other European countries too to go get, you know, euthanized in Belgium or the Netherlands or Switzerland. Switzerland was a big one too. And like, this is one of the only times I've ever had like a political stance on this channel, because I view it as just so irrelevant, and I don't want to alienate people who have differing political views than me. And hell, even the people with more unsavory political views, that may be a trauma response, right? I know I had some very unsavory political views because of my trauma before, but as I grew out of them. So I don't want to alienate anybody. But like, and like, hopefully, you know, as time goes on, they get treated more than like whatever. But this is insane. This is fucking insane. I wish, this is one of the only times for like a political reason, I wish that my channel had more influence, because like the fact that you know, you're not presented with this data, right? Somebody's like, oh, should somebody be allowed euthanasia in the worst case scenario for mental illness? I bet more people now would be like, yeah, probably. Maybe not probably, but maybe, right? And if I don't think anybody can hear these statistics and be like, oh yeah, this is being implemented in a way that I support. And how I want to point out, because I mentioned earlier how clinicians who specialized in mental health treatment were like way less likely to even consider the idea of euthanizing someone for mental illness. Like, and that's not even saying that they're just all against euthanasia, right? Like 86% of them said that for like physical illnesses, they would be open to the idea. And the fact that the people who aren't even specializing in mental illnesses are so much more likely to approve it. Holy crap. And it shows and as I said earlier, it shows like how dehumanized people with personality disorders can even get. Because like there's more emotional duress for people that approve it for people with any other mental condition, but not personality disorders. You know, it's crazy. Since when is suicide a treatment option for mental illnesses? Isn't that the thing we're trying to kind of prevent, right? Suicidality is a symptom in post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder. And instead of being like, oh, these are symptoms we have to treat, it's like, nah, fucking throw them out, right? That's insane. I know I have a little bit of a personal bias towards this one, but I'm blown away by how poor these things have been implemented. Like, again, I'm not even convinced that this shouldn't be an option, worst case scenario. But it's not working right now, that's for sure, and it should all be illegal. I think that some of those doctors I think any doctor who fucking approved the suicide, government-assisted suicide, without first like making them do every other available treatment option, I think they should be fucking stripped of any credentials they have, because that is unacceptable, hands down. That is not, to do no harm? No, that's doing harm right there. That is blatantly irresponsible and a blatant disregard for life. I know it gets demonetized so quickly on this video, and I'm sure this will be very contentious, but fuck, I stand by this 100%. Anyways, that was an intense video. Hope you have a good day. Take your fucking meds. I'm gonna put my glasses on before I sign off.